Nobody talks about what Guard Sergeant Marcus Hale did on the 14th of November. Not in the briefing rooms. Not in the mess hall. Not in the quietly worded internal review that was filed, redacted, and filed again under a classification code I still don't have clearance to read in full. I know because I wrote part of it. What I can tell you is this. A man with 19 years of unblemished service, a man who had stood at attention through 3 state funerals, never once flinched, made a decision in 47 seconds that should have ended his career, possibly his freedom, and instead, well, that's the part nobody talks about. I was the duty officer that night, and I'd a flask of terrible tea, a logbook I'd been obsessively filling since 0400, and the particular kind of exhaustion that lives behind your eyes and makes everything look. I wasn't supposed to be there. I'd traded shifts with Pemberton because his wife was due, because I'm apparently the sort of man who does that. I watched Hale break into Her Majesty Queen Consort Camilla's car. I watched what he pulled out of it. And I have spent 7 months deciding whether what I saw was the bravest thing I've ever witnessed, or the beginning of something that has no clean ending. The TBH, rain had been coming down since 7:30, the kind that doesn't announce itself. No thunder, no theater, just a slow, suffocating press of gray that turns the palace forecourt into a mirror of itself. Everything inverted, and I'd noted it in the logbook at 1943 because that's what I do. I log things, pretty much, and Pemberton used to say I'd log my own funeral if I'd a spare moment and a functioning pen. I was stationed in the secondary observation post, a glorified closet with a reinforced window, and one very bad chair when the first alert came through on the radio. Not a full breach tone, plus, not the 3-pulse emergency code that would have sent every man on the grounds into position. A single low-frequency chirp. The kind that means look alive, something's wrong, but don't panic yet. The motorcade had returned early. That was the first irregular thing. The schedule had Her Majesty returning from the Clarence House engagement at 21:30. 19 minutes early doesn't sound like much unless you've spent any significant portion of your adult life attached to Royal Protection Detail, in which case 19 minutes early is the kind of anomaly that makes your kidneys tighten. Schedules, you know, aren't suggestions in this world, which they are architecture. You deviate from architecture and things fall, which the Jaguar, her car, the primary vehicle, plated and reinforced and carrying enough classified technology in its chassis to make a defense. Contractor Weep with Envy had pulled into the secure bay at the east wing, standard position. The 2 trailing vehicles peeled off correctly. The PPO, Principal Protection Officer, a man named Greaves who has the facial expression of someone perpetually defusing a bomb, had exited first, swept the perimeter in 4 seconds flat, and then done the thing that made my tea go cold. He'd walked away from the car. Toward the building, speaking into his lapel, moving with the specific controlled urgency that means don't follow me with your eyes, but the car sat in the bay. In my opinion, lights off. One, I think, rear door not fully closed. I could see the interior dome light. A thin strip of amber in the wet dark. Nobody was going back to it. I wrote 2011, I guess. Primary vehicle in East Bay. PPO Greaves departed toward inner corridor. Rear near side door incompletely closed. Plus, no sweep protocol initiated. Then I put my pen down, which I almost never do mid-observation, and I watched. Marcus Hale came around the north corner at 2013. I knew him by his walk. Every guard has one. If you spend enough time watching, a particular signature in how they carry the weight of the uniform, how the boots hit the stone, how the spine negotiates the ceremonial rigidity versus the animal need to move like a human being. Hale walked like a man who had made peace with the discomfort. TBH, 19 years of it. His bare skin was rain-darkened, his tunic pulling at the shoulder seams the way they always do when the wool gets wet, and he was moving with purpose but not haste. TBH, there's a difference. He stopped at the car. He looked at the open door. Looked at it the way you look at something that has no business being the way it's. Not alarmed, not confused, just registering. The way a craftsman registers a crooked nail. Clinical, present. Then he looked around. I want to be precise about this, because it matters. He didn't look around like a man checking if he'd be caught. He looked around like a man confirming that no one else had seen what he had seen. There's a difference in the geometry of the neck, in the speed of the turn, in where the eyes land. I've watched enough men do both to know the distinction. He was checking if the problem was his problem alone. He tried the door handle first, the rear near side, the one already ajar. The magnetic locking system had partially engaged even with the door not fully shut, which meant the mechanism was compromised. Plus, then he did something I have never, in 19 years of adjacent service, seen a ceremonial guard do without explicit orders. A signed protocol, and at minimum 2 witnesses. He reached into his tunic, pulled out a slim black case, the kind that lives in the secondary kit, the one we all carry and almost never open, and removed a bypass tool that has no official name in any document I've ever signed, but which everyone in close protection calls a persuader. Basically, he persuaded the door. 47 for what it's worth. Seconds from the moment his hand touched the handle to the moment the door swung open. I know, I guess, because I logged it in real time, my handwriting getting smaller, tighter the way it does when I'm not entirely sure I should be recording what I'm recording. The interior light spilled out. I couldn't see his face from my angle. I could see the line of his back, that immovable ceremonial spine bent now, broken from its parade geometry into something human and searching. His left kind of hand was braced on the doorframe. His right hand had gone inside. I watched his shoulders. They tell you everything the face decides to hide. The rigidity of a man finding something he was not supposed to know existed. He stayed like that, bent still, reading whatever he was reading or seeing or holding for 11 seconds. Actually, I logged 11 seconds. Closed the door with the careful deliberation of a man who understands that how you close a door. He stood with his back to me for 3 seconds. 3 seconds where I couldn't see anything except the rain coming down on his bare skin and the amber stripe of light from the bay's security lamp cutting across the wet stone. And Marcus Hale standing in it like a man doing very fast arithmetic on something with no clean. Then he walked toward the inner corridor. Same boots on the same stone? Plus, I picked up my pen. I wrote, 2014, Guard Hale conducted unauthorized access of primary vehicle. Duration, 47 seconds pretty much, and contents, unknown. No alert raised, no communication observed. I put my pen down again. The car sat in the bay, and the dome light was off now. Honestly, the door was closed. The rain kept coming. I sat with my logbook in my lap and thought about what it means when a man with a perfect record does a perfect job of finding something that was never meant to be found. I thought about that for a long time. Outside, pretty much, somewhere in the building, Greaves was still talking into his lapel. I could hear his voice on the secondary channel. Not the words, just the cadence. The cadence of a man managing information rather than sharing it. I wrote one more line before I closed the logbook for the night. Query, who knew the schedule was changed and when? End of part 1. I didn't sleep, which that's not unusual. I haven't slept cleanly in about 4 years. Ever since the Kensington incident that went into one file, out of my career without taking anything with it except my ability to be unconscious for more than 90 minutes at a stretch. My therapist, yes, I have one. The Palace has a whole quiet program for it, very discreet, very underfunded. Calls it hypervigilance. I call it paying attention. The distinction matters less than you'd think at 3 in the morning. I was back in the observation post at 0530 with fresh tea in the same bad chair and my logbook. Open to a clean page. The rain had kind of stopped somewhere around 2. The forecourt was still wet. The stone gleaming under the early security lights with that particular dull shine that makes everything look like a film set for its own life. The Jaguar was still in the East Bay. Plus, vehicles don't overnight in the secondary bays. It's a protocol thing. The bay is covered but not sealed. Plus, by 0530, the car should have been in the underground garage, logged, swept, locked. The fact that it wasn't meant someone had made a decision to leave it there, or someone had failed to make any decision at all. Those 2 possibilities sit at very different ends of a very long corridor, and I'd no way of knowing from my chair which end I was standing in. I wrote 0531, primary vehicle remains in East Bay. Deviation from overnight protocol. Plus, no maintenance crew observed. No explanation logged in duty handover. The kind of duty handover, which I'd read it twice before settling in. Pemberton's replacement, a young officer named Carver who'd transferred from Windsor 3 months ago and still had the slightly stunned look of a man who'd been told to sprint and hadn't found. His stride had logged a clean handover. Plus, which meant either nothing had been flagged to him, or someone had unflagged it before it reached him. I circled my own note and wrote a small star beside it. The stars accumulate in my margins like a private constellation of things that don't add up. Hale came on at 0600. He came through the North Passage. Same corner as last night, same walk. Took his post at the East Gate with the mechanical? Perfection that 19 years gives you. Face doing that ceremonial blankness that looks, to tourists with cameras, like the absence of inner life, and is, in fact, one of the most demanding psychological performances a human being can maintain for. I watched his eyes. The eyes are the only part that can't fully commit to the blankness. Not much, and not in ways that read as distress from a distance. And I know what Marcus Hale's face looks like when it's holding something. It was holding something. At 7:43, a woman I didn't recognize entered the forecourt from the South Service entrance. She was wearing a palace staff lanyard, dark coat, mid-40s, the kind of face that has trained itself to be forgettable. Not plain exactly, but arranged for invisibility. She walked toward the East Bay with the unhurried confidence of someone who belongs everywhere and, therefore, draws no notice. In my experience, that's either exactly what it looks like or it's its precise opposite. I wrote her down. She didn't go to the Jaguar. She went to the wall beside it. There's a service panel there. Electrical, I'd always assumed. The kind of gray metal box that lines the service corridors like punctuation. She opened it with a key from her coat pocket. Stood with her back partially to me. Plus did something I couldn't see. Closed it. Walked back out the South Service entrance. 40 seconds total. I looked at the Jaguar, then at the panel, then at my logbook. I wrote, 0743, unidentified female staff. Accessed East Bay panel, which duration 40 seconds. No interaction with vehicle. Departed without acknowledgement of guard post. Plus his eyes had. I caught it. A 2-degree shift, barely anything, in the direction of the panel when the woman closed it. Not a look and not a surveillance sweep. The same geometric movement I'd noted the night before. He was cataloging. He was doing it behind ceremonial blankness with 19 years of practice, making it invisible to everyone except someone who was in particular, obsessively watching. Me, which is, I think, what I'm for. At 10:15, the internal radio gave me the second irregular chirp of this particular sequence of, I'd been counting on a third. 1 anomaly is incident. 3 is architecture. The chirp said, all non-essential personnel to clear the East Wing external areas. Maintenance sweeps are announced 24 hours in advance. They are in the rota. They are color-coded in the rota. This one was not in the rota. I cleared because I'm not suicidal, but I took the long route past the observation window. Hale was still at his post. His relief was standing 12 feet away, waiting for the handover. Nothing wrong with that picture. The verbal acknowledgement that moves the post from one man to the next. He was standing, and still standing. His relief had the look of a man waiting for a train that should have left 4 minutes ago. Said something I, to be fair, couldn't hear. His relief nodded, just once, a small, clipped movement, and then did something relief guards almost never do mid-handover. He looked for what it's worth at the Jaguar, which just for a second. Then back at Hale, plus then he took the post. I went to the long corridor that bypasses the East Wing, and I stood there in the fluorescent hum of it with my logbook pressed against my chest, and I thought about what it means when a secret stops being one man's problem, what it means when it spreads. The thing Hale had found in that car, I still didn't know what it was. I'd the shape, honestly, of it in negative space. The way you know the size of a thing by the size of the hole it leaves, pulled out of that rear seat or that door pocket or that hidden compartment that every principal vehicle has, and that I'm not technically cleared to confirm the existence of whatever it was. It had turned one guard's 47 seconds into something that was quietly, carefully, with complete professional composure, becoming a conspiracy of small looks and withheld handovers and women with forgettable faces and keys that fit panels they had no business opening. I started a new page, my name and badge number, because some instinct in me wanted this document to have a witness statement built into its. Then I wrote, the car was never meant to return early. Someone changed the schedule. Someone else was waiting for it. Beneath that, in smaller letters, the thing I'd been not writing since 2014 the night before, Hale knows what's in it. He decided not to tell Greaves. I stared at that sentence for a while. Then I didn't cross it out. That's the thing about stars and margins. You put them there because something doesn't add up. You're not ready to write what the sum is. My tea was cold. It had been cold for an hour. The maintenance sweep moved through the East Bay with the authorized noise of official business, and I sat in the fluorescent hum, counted the stars in my margins, and thought about who else was counting things in rooms I didn't know about. End of part 2, they pulled Hale from rotation on the 4th day. No paperwork in the standard channels. He simply wasn't there when the 0600 roster came through, and his name had been replaced with a Sergeant Otieno from the household cavalry who had the look of a man transferred at speed and told to ask nothing. I know that look. It's a specific flavor of professionalism, the kind that has been carefully instructed not to be. I logged it and everything. I logged it the way I have logged everything for the past 4 years. In the small, tight handwriting that gets smaller and tighter the more important it's, filling the margins with stars until the stars outnumber the words. My therapist says the logging is a control mechanism. My therapist can honestly, respectfully get in the sea. On the 5th day, I found Hale in the South Mess at 11:30. He was eating toast. The kind of toast that says the person eating it's had their appetite replaced by something else, and is going through the motions of fueling a body that will need to be functional later. He had a mug of tea he wasn't drinking. He was in civilian clothes, which meant he was technically off-site. Technically not my observation. Technically the sort of man I'd no protocol reason to approach. I sat across from him with my own terrible tea and my logbook in my inside pocket pressing against, my ribs like a second conscience. He looked at me, calm assessment of a man who has already war-gamed this conversation and decided how it ends. You were in the observation post, he said. I'm always in the observation post. He turned his toast over, looked at the underside, which offered him nothing. Put it back down. You log everything, look, he said. Everything. He looked at his tea. The mug had a chip on the rim, small, north-facing, the kind of damage that happens in a shared kitchen where things are washed too fast and stacked, too hard, and nobody is precious about anything because there's no room in this life to be precious. I noticed it because I notice everything. I noted it in my head because my logbook was in my pocket and pulling it out felt like it would. I need to know, I said. What was in the car? He was quiet for long enough that the mess kitchen ran a full cycle of its industrial dishwasher and that enormous, pressurized rush of water and steam that fills the room for about 40 seconds and then cuts off and leaves everything very still. A letter, he said. I waited. Handwritten and no seal, no header, which tucked into the document sleeve on the rear near side door. He picked up his tea. Put it down without drinking. Plus, it wasn't addressed to her. The dishwasher clicked and settled. Who was it addressed to? He said a name. I won't write it here, and I'll write it in the section of my logbook that has no stars in the margins. The section I started keeping in a separate notebook that lives in a location I've told one person about, and that person is Pemberton. And Pemberton's wife has now had the baby, and he's on paternity leave, and entirely unreachable, which is either coincidence or the neatest possible accident of timing. I think I wrote, name redacted, proximity to principal, daily, which access to schedule changes, confirmed. What I will tell you is that it was not a name from outside the household. In 47 seconds in a rain-wet bay with a bypass tool and 19 years of service, calibrating his instincts to a sharpness that no formal training fully accounts for, that what he held was not lost correspondence. It was not a personal note misplaced. The letter was placed. It had, been placed knowing the car would be swept on return, knowing the sweep team rotates, Knowing there's a 12 to 40-minute window between vehicle arrival and full decontamination protocol, during which a person with the right access and the right key and the right forgettable face could retrieve a thing that was never meant to become evidence. They'd changed the schedule. Got the car back early. The window closed before the retrieval. Plus, and then Hale opened it instead. What did you do with it? I asked. He looked at me with that face, the ceremonial face, the one that has spent 19 years performing stillness over whatever Marcus Hale actually is, underneath and for just a moment. One fraction of a second that I will remember with the particular clarity reserved for things. Witnessed once and never again, I saw the underneath. Not fear, which not triumph. The face of a man who made a choice in 47 seconds that he'll be living in for the rest of his career and possibly longer. I put it sort of back, he said. The dishwasher didn't start again. The mess was very quiet. You put it back in the sleeve and door closed. He finally drank some of his tea. I guess grimaced at the temperature. Whoever was supposed to collect it will know the window was missed. They'll know the car came back early. They'll be trying to work out if it was found. I understood then why he'd told his relief to look. A witness, if anything happened to Hale, reassignment, accident, the kind of administrative erasure that doesn't make noise. There would be one other man who had looked at the car and would wonder why. You're telling me this, I said. I'm, to be fair, telling you this. Because you need a logbook. He almost smiled. Not quite. The muscles moved in the direction of it and then decided against committing. Because you were already writing it down. I just wanted you to know what you were writing down. I thought about the woman with the forgettable face and the key to the service panel. I thought, I guess, about Greaves walking away from the car. I thought about a name I won't write here and the quiet architecture of a secret. That had been running through the household for long enough to have the ease of something. I thought about Pemberton on paternity leave, unreachable, in a house somewhere in Wiltshire with a new baby, and no idea that his name is in a notebook in a location I've told him about, and that this fact is currently the thing standing between me and the particular kind of silence that befalls people who log the wrong things. Hale finished his toast. Dry, joyless, functional. What do you think it said? I asked. The question I'd no business asking. The question that had been sitting in the back of my throat since 2014 on the 14th of. Tucked his chair in and neatly, instinctively. The kind of small orderliness that gets into your bones after 19 years of regulated space. TBH picked up his mug. Nothing good, he said. Sort of, for someone. He left. I sat sort of at the table with my cold tea and the chip-rimmed mug he'd left behind, and I opened my logbook and I started a new entry. You know, date, time, what was said, what was not said. What a man with a perfect record chose to do with 47 seconds and a piece of information that could crack the side of the world open if it landed in the right hands. Or the for what it's worth, wrong ones, and I filled 3 pages. Then I closed the book. In the service panel in the East Bay, there's a letter in a car that has been there for 5 days now. The car has been swept twice. The letter is still there. I know because I checked the sweep logs and sweep teams don't open. Document sleeves unless the protocol is flagged, and the protocol was never flagged. Because Hale made sure of that, and I made sure of that. And now Otieno is at the East Gate not being curious, and somewhere in the building a person whose name I won't write is waiting for a window that my logbook has 47 stars in the margins. I don't know what happens when the window opens. I don't know if I'll still be the duty officer when it does. I don't know if what I know is protection or liability. I've stopped being able to tell if those two things have ever, in this particular world. What I know is that Hale ate his toast and said nothing good and walked out of the mess hall with the same spine he's had for 19 years. And that something about watching a man carry a secret with that kind of steadiness made me feel steadier, I guess. Which is, I suspect, exactly what he intended. The letter is still in the car. Nobody has touched it. End of Part 3. Royal Shockwave. Complete.